Welcome to the 38th episode of Impact Media Presents Black Women Leaders LA Part 2. This is Sister CEOs Speak. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Kelly Redmond, your host and Executive Director of Impact Media and Entertainment Coalition, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Today, I am joined by three very special ladies to me. I'd like to introduce you to Wendy Gladney, Shaunelle Curry, and Tera Hilliard. Wendy is CEO of Forgiving for Living. Tera is CEO of Forgotten Children, Inc. And Shaunelle is CEO of Media Done Responsibly. Welcome, my sisters. How are you today?
Thank you. Wonderful.
Wonderful.
It's great to see you and have you. We've been planning on this for a while. I'm glad we could align these schedules to do this.
Yes.
And it's always important and always impactful. I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. Each of you has been a part of my journey in a very special way since I've been here in LA. I thank you for that then. I'm so glad we've reconnected through Black Women Leaders LA since the pandemic hit and Candy Lewis brought us all together. Tell everyone, let's start with Wendy, how this has been since the pandemic and being a part of Black Women Leaders LA.
Oh my gosh. Like you said, Kelly, one of the wonderful things about all of this is bringing sisters together. And like you said, some of us knew each other a little bit better than some of the other ladies. And some of us know each other in passing, like we're familiar with our work and we know we're out there. But now we've been able to form a bond and be able to figure out, how can we support one another? How can we be there for each other? And not just during COVID-19, but even moving forward, after all of this is done and over, because we're just believing that. And
absolutely,
we can also share resources and help each other.
And that's what we've been doing. And you've been wonderful at that, making sure that, we're aware of the grants and the different things that are available. And we share each information about events. Tera, you just had a big event. Why don't you tell us how things have been going and how things are going from your perspective?
Yes. Well, just like my sisters here, and thank you for having us. It's really an honor to be on this show with you today. And just, to share the platform with Shaunelle and Wendy. But when COVID-19 hit, just like many nonprofits, we had to pivot from our in-person fundraisers to getting a little bit more creative and going online. And so we had an online auction that ran from October 1st through the 15th. And we absolutely did not know what to expect from the auction or, what was going to happen. But, our board of directors, they are an amazing group of people and jumped in and we launched the auction. So we're in the final stages of finalizing everything. But I think we reached halfway. Our goal was to raise $50,000, and I believe we're halfway there. So we're still tallying, and
that's awesome.
But just even for people to give online, I mean, people are very skeptical, and so I'm so thankful and so grateful for the people who believe in our mission and support the things that we're doing. So super excited. So thank you.
No, absolutely. And Shaunelle, who is no stranger to Impact Media and the Positive Impact Campaign. We have partnered and collaborated for many years. It's great to be on a platform with you again, my sister. How are you?
I am wonderful.
And I was so excited to see you in the Black Women Leaders. I'm like, yes.
Just, like Wendy was saying as well, there are people that we knew and had just not connected with in a minute. I've worked with you, Kelly. I've worked with Wendy. I got to meet Tera officially, and work in a space together. So it was beautiful, just to reconnect. And we've, Kelly, you and we've sat down over food and talked and strategized, etc. for years. And so this is really wonderful to see a lot of what we've spoken about come into fruition and to bring together powerful Black women, right? To talk about the various aspects of the work we do and to bring it together all in this coalition where every need is met because we are all doing some element of the work. That is huge. It is critical. So
absolutely. Thank you. So I always start the show with and ask my guests, why? Why do you do this work? Why is this important to you? Kind of what's your path to doing this work, your path to leadership? So let's see. Tera, why don't you start?
Oh, thank you. It's so funny. I grew up in South Los Angeles and no stranger to the issues on the streets. I mean, literally, I grew up, with gang members, grew up with prostitution and pimps and domestic violence. And unfortunately, when you come from an environment where those behaviors are the norm, I'm not saying that they're right, but they're the norm, where they're acceptable. I just, like most people, I had no idea that human trafficking existed, although I was around it every single day. And so when it was, when actually it was through prayer that the Lord exposed this area to me. And then I just met Pastor Paula Daniels, who is the founder of Forgotten Children, and was coming to her just to be mentored to learn more about human trafficking. And as I began to realize, human trafficking is hidden in plain sight where everybody can see, but nobody understands that it's human trafficking, because we see a girl who's prostituting and she has a pimp. I mean, we grew up, I'm a kid from the 70s and the 80s, and we remember the pimps back in the day. We remember how they were glamorized and how, I mean, we have songs about pimping. We had shows about pimping. So pimping was not a big deal. But little did we know that pimps are traffickers. And so human trafficking is modern day slavery. And in fact, the numbers show that the numbers are doubled in the number of human slaves there are today than those that came over on the transatlantic slave trade. And so that's a problem. Wow. So for me, as I grow daily in the knowledge about human trafficking, and I feel like that God has given me this platform to make a lot of noise as much as I can. I'm doing that, because no one has a right to own anyone today, through slavery. My child was at home. I'm sorry. And
no problem.
So my passion is because I have 3 girls and I have nieces and I have friends and I have sons. And so not one person should be trafficked at all. So including this 11-year-old child who keeps calling.
Yes.
So that's why I'm passionate about it.
Thank you. Thank you. And Wendy, you work with girls as well, specifically. Why don't you tell us why you do this work?
Okay.
Very important work.
Thank you, Kelly. And, even as Tera said, thank you for letting us get our message out there and share on your show. So Forgiving for Living was actually started in 1999. And it started before then, but that's when we actually went through all the legalities and became, formal as a 501c3. And Forgiving for Living was really born out of my own life experiences. Similar to what Tera was saying. I mean, I grew up with a father who was a pimp. My dad was actually a pimp, a drug addict, a drug dealer, and, gambling house and all of that. And I was actually abandoned by my birth mother because my mother's white and my father's African-American, and my mother's family disowned her when she had a black child and was married to a black man. She couldn't handle that. So by the time I was 3, and she was only 18 when I was born. So by the time I was 3, she was gone out of my life. And so I knew what it felt like to experience abuse and abandonment because my father sexually abused me growing up. I was also, just like Tera said, I grew up in an environment where it was no big deal to go to my dad's gambling shack and to hang out with people that, actually some of them we actually called aunt and uncle, and they were prostitutes and drug dealers. But we didn't understand that as kids. They were just people in the neighborhood, people in the community. And so being able to survive that, people started asking me as I was in my 20s and so forth, especially when people found out about my story, because it came out before that. How did you do it? How did you make it? How did you get out of here? How did you not give up? How did you not become a prostitute? How did you not get involved with drugs? And I really hadn't thought about it. And then I started praying because I am also a Christian, and my grandmother on my father's side raised us in the church, and that was my saving grace. And I have to say that. And as time went on, I began to think about how did I? And as I thought about that, I put together 10 steps that are called Healing Without Hate, How to Forgive to Live. And within those 10 steps, people started asking me to help their daughter, help their sister, help their mother that had either been a victim of abuse, abandonment, or both, and that was the birth of Forgiving for Living. I've actually had several young ladies who've lived with me in my house. One lady almost lived here 3 years, and I helped her get her kids back because of some things that she'd gone through in her life. And so Forgiving for Living is all about helping young women between 12 and 18, but we actually have girls as young as 10, because sometimes sisters will ask us, can my younger sister come to the program? That we really help them to build a positive self-esteem, to get through some of the issues that they face, as well as to provide life and mentoring skills and college preparedness. Now, just like Tera said, we've had to pivot because we've been an in-person program, and we've done a lot of partnering with the Boys and Girls Club of Watts Willowbrook, and then also a facility out here in San Bernardino County. And now we're pivoting onto online activities, including a conference we're going to have coming up that will deal with talking about even things like HIV and STDs and things like that, because there's been now a new rise with girls that we're serving that are experiencing these issues. And then as well as the other normal activities that we do through Forgiving for Living.
Yes. No, thank you, Wendy. And I thank you, Wendy. All these years later, you were the first conference that I was invited to do a positive impact campaign workshop for. So thank you for that. I still remember. So, all right, Shaunelle, I know, but let's share with everybody else why you do this work. It's so important. It's work that's personally important to me, all of the work that you're doing, but we are completely aligned.
We are. Thank you, Kelly. I was going to say, absolutely. And, I want to connect also with what Wendy said and what Tera said about the normalization of hypersexuality, of pimping, all of these things in our community. There is misinformation in the media that drive attitudes and prejudices that directly impact the lives of Black people, period. And the entities that control and have the power to tell the stories of a people influence their history, influence their current movement, influence their progress in the world. And so in terms of my why, my number one first why, I would say, is to create an institution that disrupts that misinformation and that centers the stories and the humanity of Black, Indigenous people of color. And my second would be, there is an urgent need right now for young people to have critical media literacy thought. We live in a digital age right now, and nothing has shown it to us like COVID and this quarantine, where there's nothing that we can do other than be online, right? Any of the work that we're doing is having to shift online. But what we don't understand is the way oftentimes that media works, that digital spaces work, and our young people, even though they know how to function in them, don't understand that the impact that it has on their lives. And so my why is to help them to understand that impact so that they can turn it around as a tool for power for themselves. There is AI, artificial intelligence, in the form of algorithms that are seeped in racism and bias. There are algorithms that are predictive models that end up blocking our success and directly blocking the impact of Black people. So these algorithms are set up and they determine whether or not you get hired for a job, you get a scholarship, you even get accepted into a college or university, whether or not you are up for parole or get parole, right? Whether or not you get a home loan, a credit card, etc. And it is completely, it's not transparent at all. And the way that it operates, you cannot point to an individual person and say, well, I can come and talk to you and say, well, why didn't I get this particular loan, or why couldn't I get into the school? There's a hands-off approach, this idea that, well, the numbers say this, right? But what's not looked at are who are the technologists that are at the table that are developing the programs that decide and determine that. And so we have to do the work to bring Black people to that table. We need Black technologists. We need executives like us. We need to be creating career pathways for executives like us to sit at the tables that are creating this influence and this power, right? So that our interests will be aligned. So that's my why, right? So shifting the power, making sure that our stories are told properly, and that you know, that we are in the spaces to shift what's happening.
Thank you so much. And thank you for dropping that impactful lesson that you just did and opening the eyes of people who may not have known. I really appreciate you sharing that really important information. So we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of we're finally getting some attention around diversity, equity, and inclusion for women, for Black people. I want to hear from you ladies around what you think is working, has worked in the past, and what needs to be done, you know, to really impact these two populations. Whoever would like to go first can go first.
Kelly, I don't mind hopefully sharing a little bit of information on that, because we do some work in that area too on my for-profit side. And I would say that one of the biggest things that is happening right now is accountability. Accountability, you know, holding people accountable and not giving up. Like, don't think it's just for these 3 months or these 2 months, or, you know, let's just talk about it right now. No, it has to keep going. It has to be something that's always on our agenda. I'm going to pass it on to the other ladies, but I just really wanted to say that, because what I've learned is sometimes people, you know, think, okay, we're over that now, like, let's move on to the next thing. No, we got to keep it in the forefront on the agenda.
Absolutely. And like you said, the accountability is so important. And if it's not tied to specific goals for individuals within these companies, it's not going to happen. And if it's not the individual goals as well as the corporate goals, it won't happen.
Correct.
And so, and you cannot hire one person as a diversity officer and expect that the work is going to be done. You have to make it everyone's job, not just one person.
Correct. And it has to start from the top down.
Absolutely.
You know, the president on down within the company. Everybody has to buy in.
And if the person that the chief diversity officer is not reporting to the CEO, if they're just reporting to HR or a part of HR, it won't be impactful either. So absolutely. Shaunelle, I know you've got a lot you want to say as well as Tera. Thanks.
Yeah. So, you know, I think what's happened lately during COVID and this summer with the major protests, the murdering of George Floyd, is there's a heightened awareness that there is a need. And this awareness, it's always been in our community, but it's expanded, right? It's expanded to other cultures and communities. It's expanded worldwide. So I think that is the good thing that's happening. The thing that needs to happen, though, is, like you mentioned, very strategic planning and work being done around creating a shift. And I think creating these career pathways for our young people is essential to get them at the table. Make sure, and I'll speak from my particular field of media education and media literacy and digital citizenship, make sure that there is education. Like I spoke about these algorithms earlier, but there need to be technologists that are Black and brown that are also critically aware of the way that this technology is being used now and have strategic solutions to create something new and different, right? And that means that we have to put our time, our money, and our energy and our focus into helping to open up pathways to their success. A lot of times we think of media and we think, you know, we might think of a music video or we might think of a movie or a film. And all of those things are essential and important, but we often leave out this digital platform that has consumed our lives and the critical importance of us having technologists that look like us, that are aware and that have positions of power in them. So I think that is a big part of what we do. Like you said, Kelly, not just one person, it has to be a part of the culture. Part of what we do with Media Done Responsibly when we have our MDR awards is we amplify individuals and institutions that embed diversity, equity, and inclusion into their principles, their policies, their practices, and their platform, right? So it has to be across the board.
Absolutely. Thank you. Tera.
Well, I guess I'm gonna come from just a different spin, because we're talking about human trafficking, and 52% of the girls that are trafficked here domestically are African American girls. And so, going back to what I stated earlier, when you live in a community where abuse and poverty and all these things play such a major role, and when you find that African Americans comprise the largest portion of the foster care system, then it brings me back to this conversation that, while we're talking about Black Lives Matter and what's happened with George Floyd, are all very relevant, but no one talks about the Black girls that are being trafficked here domestically. I'm not talking about in another country. I'm talking about a conversation must be had about our girls on our local streets that are being pimped, that are being abused, that are being neglected. We have to talk about how 3 miles down the road that you have girls as young as 12 and 13 that are being pimped, and Carl's can't talk, drive by them every single day. And so for me, going back to just this conversation about media, how can we begin to just shed some light about what young Black girls in our communities are going through? Number one. Number two, how the foster care system plays a role, and how transition age youth especially African American youth, are primarily the ones that are on the streets. And so how do we have that conversation? And then after we have the conversation, then how do we begin to talk about resources and support for organizations like ours, so that we can provide a bed, so that we can provide them with the tools that they need, exposing them to positive media, exposing them to positive mentors and things like that. And so, I get, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but I just, I hear the cries of the Black community. It's unfortunate what has happened, but there's not that same outcry when it comes to Black girls on the streets. There's not that same cry that Black girls are perpetuated in the media as being, something other than a queen. Okay. So I'll leave it at that. You guys can fill in the blanks. So how do we change that perspective? How do we get young Black girls to understand their worth is not on Instagram, but their worth is, far above rubies, right? And so how do we have that conversation so that we can decrease the number of girls that are being trafficked or enticed to be trafficked? Okay. And then how do we then have the conversation with young Black males? And I'm gonna just say this much real quick, and I'm done because I get the preaching. But people always ask me, why are people, trafficking girls? Because you can flip a 14-year-old girl 7 times a night and never get caught. Most pimps, what people don't know, make on average $7,000 a day on the backs of girls between the ages of 12 and 17. That's a day. And we're talking about, and most of these boys, and they're boys, are 18 to 25 years old. And that's local. When we get into global numbers, that number increases. And so when we talk about changing the narrative, especially in the Black community, how do we change that narrative?
So Tera, that's heartbreaking what you just shared. Tell us, and this will start off this next segment, about what your primary call to action is. How can people get involved? How can people support your organization? So why don't you kick off this round of questions right now?
Thank you. People can go to fci-la.org to find out more about our organization. We provide awareness education to churches, to schools, to corporate sponsors, because it's very important for people to understand what human trafficking is. We dispel myths. We educate the community. We do parent education groups. And the other thing is, for those who have a heart for young people, partner with us. We just launched our Youth Ambassadors program the end of last year, and so still in this kind of incubation phase. But what programs are out there that we can that can come alongside of our youth program? Because again, it's about raising up a new generation that says no to trafficking, no to pimping, no to abuse of women and girls. And the other thing, just like Shaunelle and Wendy, we are a nonprofit organization. If someone is desiring to to partner with us financially, they can go to our website, they can give. But there's something that everyone can do, and that includes education. I tell people, don't take my word for it, just Google human trafficking here locally. And last thing I will say is that FCI focuses on the girls that are here domestically that are being trafficked. We're not an international organization yet, because I believe that we can't deal with what's at home, then how can I go overseas? So we have to first address our issues here locally.
Shaunelle? How can people support MDR?
Thank you, Kelly. You know, I was trying to get into this conversation. Tera, thank you for the work that you are doing, and it's incredible. And what you mentioned about, you know, the representation of the girls and what they're going through, it is glorified. And part of the work that Media Done Responsibly does is create mentorship programs. So we work with local universities throughout LA County, and we provide mentors for high school young people to talk and dissect the media that they're consuming, the media images that represent them as that prostitute, the media images that represent them as that gangbanger or pimp, and only represents them in that way, right? And it normalizes it. We have them ask critical questions about this. Why is it that this is the only way that you can be represented in some sort of mainstream media format? And then we dig into it with them and help them to understand their true value, how they should be represented, and what kind of tools they can use to represent themselves. And so I would love to connect with you. You know, I've worked with Wendy and Kelly. You all know about this work, but it's important. And this is what I'm saying when I'm saying who has the power to tell your story, right? And when it becomes normalized, it directly impacts our lives. And so part of what we're launching on October 24th is our very first virtual film festival. I'm excited about it. Yes.
Very excited.
So we want to center these voices and tell stories of our humanity. So we are looking specifically for films, short films, full-length narratives, music videos, web series, etc., that center the voices and humanity of Black people and BIPOC individuals. We're also creating an ongoing platform for civil dialogue, for us to have conversations like this, right? And talk about the issues that we're having, not in a debate format, but in a format that emphasizes empathy and listening and authentic communication and sharing. We did that after the murder of George Floyd, and people needed to come together and have conversation, you know, because we couldn't get together in the way that we needed to. So we did it virtually, and it was very, very powerful. People from all over the country, tears. We've never met these folks before, but we're sharing from our heart. And so we're wanting to create online safe spaces for young people and adults of all ages. I say young people of all ages to come together and continue these civil dialogues and engage in music, art, etc. with one another. And then like you all, we're trying to figure out how do we do our MDR award. So that's going to be virtual again, or for the first time this year as well, on December the 19th. So let's stay connected, mediadonresponsibly.org. People can email me at info@mediadonresponsibly, and also on Instagram at Media Done Responsibly, and Facebook at Media Done Responsibly as well. So thank you so much, Kelly, for this platform.
Oh, no, thank you.
I can talk to you ladies all day.
Yeah. Same here. Thank you, Shaunelle. Wendy?
Well, thank you so much again, Kelly. And Forgiving for Living, that's our name. Forgivingforliving.org is where you can find us. And, you know, just to kind of piggyback on what my sisters have already shared is Forgiving for Living is small, but we consider ourselves mighty. And we don't touch thousands of girls in a year. We touch hundreds. But we even mentor a smaller number than that. But we touch about anywhere from 150 to 200 girls a year normally. But what we try to do is be consistent and to have a relationship with them over the years. Whereas in the beginning, we started as just a one-year program, because what we've realized is that the girls we serve, which is the age group that both Shaunelle and Tera are talking about, they need consistency in their life. They need to have role models and examples that look like them, that they know care about them and are willing to sacrifice. And it's interesting because one of my experiences in the past was when I would show up, you know, at one of the housing projects in LA or one of the Boys and Girls Club, and the girls would look at me like, who is she? You know, and then they think you're just going to be there for a minute. But then when they realize that you really care and that you also personally are willing to share your story and you've been through something, and now you have a roadmap, which one of my sisters was sharing about, that a roadmap as it relates to how to help them to have a positive life. And I think you said, Kelly, how can we, you know, have our voices heard? And I know Shaunelle and Tera also said it and agreed, and that is, it's us. It's up to
Yes,
us, which is also
absolutely.
why the Black Women Leaders of LA is so important, because we're small, but we're mighty, and we have voices, and we're going to let our voices be heard through all of the different channels and avenues we have. And if we keep doing it consistently over time, it's going to have an impact. It's going to make a difference. But we have to be willing to get out of our comfort zones, step forward and do what needs to be done, and then also band together and help each other whenever possible. And instead of recreating the wheel all the time, is like, I'm taking notes, because if I see that there's something Shaunelle's doing, I don't need to do that. But what I can do is throw some resources behind her, throw some money behind her,
Right.
throw some girls. Same thing with Tera, because many of us are trying to serve a very similar population, but just going through different doors. And so it doesn't mean we have to stop, but if there's a way that we can bring them together to help each other, then we have to be mindful of that. And we thank you, Kelly, for having a platform that allows us to be able to share this message for those who are listening, who may even have a similar interest, but don't know really where to go or where to start. And you have
Absolutely.
3 nonprofit organizations right here today that are right here in Southern
Or
California.
yeah.
4, that's right. Let's not forget you, Kelly, that are doing things that people can support. So we say
Yes.
thank you.
No, thank you, ladies. You know, I believe in your work, your mission. I've seen it firsthand, and I salute you, salute your teams and the work that you do. Proud to be, a partner, supporter, and I look forward to continuing to, make an impact collectively through our individual relationships and through the Black Women Leaders LA. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you, ladies. We'll be back. We'll be back again. Good to see
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. That was a very, very special show. And we want you to share it with your friends, with your family, your network, whether you're in LA or not. There were lessons I learned and shared here today. And I hope you continue to pass it on. Until next time, thank you so much. Have a blessed day.